Welcome to another episode of Homeric. On today's episode, I was asked to talk a little bit about myself and who I am and what have I created. So here it goes. When I was a kid, I was very artistically drawn to all forms of art. Music, visual arts, stories. I remember my mother showing me a picture of a drawing of Peter Pan when I was the age of 3. My mother always instilled in me a love for art. I came from a very creative family. My father was a musician, mother was an artist, a fashion designer at that too, and my brother and sister are both artistically inclined. I am the youngest in my family. And growing up, I was really into video games and movies. My brother worked at movie theaters ever since he was 18, and I was, at the time, 8. And my sister loved anime and video games, which, of course, she got from my brother. My brother would be the one to buy the Xbox, the GameCube, the PlayStation, all of that stuff. And I remember as early when my brother had a Super Nintendo and my cousin used to have the Nintendo Entertainment System. Man, we would be playing that all the time. That carried forward into my life. I really got into video games. And it was in 6th grade that I decided, after being inspired so much by a video game called The Legend of Zelda, that I wanted to create my own fan fiction. So I ended up trying to do that, and I worked with a friend of mine who is, to this day, one of my best friends, working on a video game that never really saw the light of day. But it was fun. It was a lot of fun, and I learned so much doing it. We would draw all the characters. We would make the maps. We would make the dungeons. And then I would also write the story of what these characters were doing in the book or in the game. To this day, I remember sending my ideas to Nintendo and getting a letter from them saying, hey, you have some cool ideas here, keep that inspiration going. And they would actually highlight some ideas that they liked, and sometimes I would never get a return on the ideas that I sent. So they said they would actually put them in a drawer somewhere. I don't know if it ever got used, but maybe it served for some inspiration down the road for them. Either way, to a kid, that was the best thing you could ever do for a kid. And it only further instilled this wanting, this need, this purpose to create more of this fan fiction. So I eventually took that fan fiction a step further in middle school and decided I wanted to make an actual game out of it. I tried, and I got a free trial of this program at the time called RPG Maker XP. And RPG Maker XP, right, this is Windows XP at this time, was like a very bare bones type of sort of Game Boy looking game. And I loved it for what it was able to do. It was simple enough for me to create it, and I had 30 days of a trial, and I made about 30 minutes of gameplay. I spent a lot of time. It doesn't sound like a lot, but I spent a lot of time. And for those of you who actually make video games, you probably know how long of an amount of time it takes just to make 5 minutes of gameplay. So I really got into it, but it was at that moment that I was playing around with the soundtrack that was supposed to be within the game, and I said, I want to do original music here. So that's where I started to dive into music. Up until that point, I was already, I was a kid who loved Bionicles and Legos and stuff of that sort, along with the video games. And I was experimenting with a home video camera at the time, those big bulky ones that you hold like this, and you're just kind of shooting like this. Not like DSLRs like we got today. But I had this camera, and I recorded on tape, home videos of Bionicles and stop motion animation. That was like my first instance of actually creating a story come to life on a screen. That, along with creating this video game of a Zelda game that would never see the light of day, I ended up becoming so interested in the process of creation. And I took it a step further and wanted to go into creating music. By doing that, I got into a video game called Guitar Hero 2. That's the best one. And then I got into Rock Band. And Rock Band, believe it or not, was actually the first time I ever wanted to really play drums. So this was already now into like high school. And I actually saved my lunch money and bought Xbox points instead of spending it on my meals. I would skip lunch many times just to go to GameStop and get those points so I could buy more songs for Rock Band. It went to a good cause, I guess, because I ended up really loving drums. And I would be playing on, expert mode and all this kind of stuff. And then I went to my dad and said, hey, man, I want to try and play the drums for real. What do you think about that? And he's like, hold your horses. One, he was like, you're not touching my drums until I can see that you're actually dedicated and motivated enough to really do this. So he gave me this little practice pad. It was made out of rubber and wood. Literally, it was like this thing that could have been made from a junkyard. I remember how much my dad actually loved that practice pad, saying that the rebound off this rubber, this type of rubber that was being used, was very similar to the rebound you would get off of a drum head. And it was a very special thing to him for me to use that. And I remember my mother and my father both being just incredibly supportive of my journey learning how to play drums. My father, he really was the person to teach me everything there was about playing drums. I fell in love with it so much I played 6 hours a day many times, and I would sneak to play in the rehearsal rooms after school. A lot of the kids in my musical art high school, which was LaGuardia High School of Music, Art, and Performing Arts, a lot of them, we had actually our own majors, and I was an art major at the time, and I decided I wanted to sneakily go into the music room, so they used to call me a instrument major wannabe. And I kind of took it as a compliment. I was like, hey, man, maybe they don't see me as one of them per se, but I was one of them. And they treated me as such, even though I wasn't officially under the title. And I really still have a lot of good memories, and I still have some friends from that era that really supported me during those times, and I'm grateful for that. And it wasn't till after high school that I actually got into music production. I intended on going to Berklee College of Music, and I got in with only 1 year of playing drums because I was playing so much drums during that year. It was wild how much I was really playing drums. I did quantum leaps that year. I really tried so hard to get into Berklee. I thought it was the only way to go at the time. Of course, that's just me being, tunnel vision and narrow-minded. I can get that way sometimes. But I knew that I was I got to go to Berklee. So I went to Berklee to the audition. I got in, and then I got slapped with that bill. I was like, I got to go, right? I'm going to go, right? And my parents were like, no, you're not. So I ended up actually going to the only other school that I got into because I was so focused on doing arts. I totally disregarded my mathematics, my English, and I was only able to go to a community college by the name of Queensborough Community College. And I thought Queensborough was going to be where I would have to just kind of get by, right? And then maybe I'd go to Berklee again, try later, get a scholarship of that sort. I actually ended up pursuing music production instead because I was like, well, I don't think I'm going to get a quality education at Queensborough. I was going to get it at Berklee. So I decided, okay, let me try a trade that at least I can learn some skill out of it. And that next year, I applied to Berklee again. I got in again, and I still got no scholarship. What the fuck? So the only thing that was left for me to do was to consider really taking Queensboro seriously this time. And lo and behold, it happened to be the best thing that could have ever happened, because it was in Queensboro where I found an audio career. This was the career that was going to take me as an artist to the next level. And after I graduated Queensboro, I went to City College of New York, attended the Sonic Arts Center there, and it was there that I created Homeric. It's wild to think that if I had gone to Berkeley, I probably would have never created Homeric. Just that one decision, right? The big decision. Because I needed to go through Queensboro. I needed to be humbled. Life has a curious way of teaching you. And when I was in CCNY, I remember it was one of the last few classes that I was going to take. And during that class, it was a summer course. It was a summer course intensive on literature. William Shakespeare, had, Candide. We had studied actually the Bible. And we also studied Dante's Inferno. And Dante's Inferno, of course, is an Italian poem by Dante Alighieri. You can watch my video for that. And when I was studying Dante's Inferno, I grew really interested in the concept of salvation and moving towards greater good, which is what the Divine Comedy is all about. Recognizing sin, how to labor for good intentions, and then achieving goodness in its entirety. And it was that teacher, that very same teacher, that also taught me about the word Homeric. What it means to be super grandiose, super epic. And while I was creating my album, while I was jamming out with, one of my now ex-bandmates, I remember that moment when we were discussing what would be the name. Originally, we thought Opus, which means just work. And Opus was actually from our old project when we were back in high school. Me and my guitarist were always playing on the side back in high school because of Guitar Hero. We would actually play games together online, well, music games in that matter, and we had a lot of fun doing it. And after a certain period of time, we met again in college, and we started to play music, which would eventually become Homeric. First song was The Legion. And after some time, when I was creating this album, I thought to myself, well, I love the music, the concept of what I was doing. It was very worldly and had a lot of influence from different styles of music. But one thing that I wanted to do was leave myself some sort of an opening for a sequel. And I didn't know quite exactly what it could be. And I remember that when I was creating the song, A Song of the Night, I decided at the end of it, let's do part one. Because A Song of the Night had potential. A potential to be something much bigger. And lo and behold, it became a lot bigger. It's actually gargantuan now. I can only imagine, talking to my younger self at the time, as I am now, about what would be to come. And just falling in love with giving this project an opportunity. And my education gave me that opportunity. So I'm grateful for my journey. Now, I actually think this is a really great video to share with you, because I think it also puts into perspective not just what goes into creating an album, but an appreciation for the journey of somebody's life. Because whenever you see an artist, there's a story behind that album, that piece of music that they've created. It's the entire life story. It's almost like a memoir. So the next time you talk to your buddy about their album, they mention, I'm working on this thing, think about it a different way. I hope this video gives you some sort of new perspective on that. Because artistry does not come without obstacles, and it doesn't come without the hardship of effort.